Silence. If I say anybody talking, will be sent out. Okay, let's continue with lipid metabolism. What is done last class? Digestion, absorption of lipids. So I will be teaching about oxidation of fatty acids. Okay, just you have fatty acid synthesis, you have fatty acid oxidation, you have cholesterol synthesis. I will be dealing with a small portion which is beta oxidation, different kinds of oxidation, and ketone body synthesis and ketone body utilization. Now, just a summary of the lipid metabolism. So, you have adipose tissue, where what is stored in adipose tissue? Fat. Layman's term is fat. You should use the word triacyl glycerol. Okay. Fat means triacyl glycerol. So, as you know from the intestine, whatever dietary lipids we take, that is converted to chylomicrons, and it is transported as chylomicrons to the peripheral tissues. For what reason? For oxidation, which means basically for energy. And whatever is in excess will be stored in the adipose tissue, because it is a place where these fat or triacyl glycerol is stored. So, it is stored as triacyl glycerol in the adipose tissue. And what is this from the liver? Whatever endogenous lipids, whatever is synthesized in the body. This is about the dietary lipids. These are the endogenous lipids, that is the lipids which are synthesized within the body, that is in the liver, from the liver, is transported as VLDL and LDL. If you remember, in the chemistry I taught you all about the lipoprotein classification. So, again you will be studying in detail about this, how it is formed and its metabolism. Now, remember that you have certain endogenous lipids which are synthesized in the body. That is why they are called as endogenous, and they are transported again into the peripheral tissues, or it can be transported to the adipose tissue for storage. Now, I will be dealing only with the simple lipid metabolism, that is the fatty acid part of the triacyl glycerol. What are triacyl glycerol? They are the simple lipids. They are esters of fatty acid and glycerol or alcohol. So, only about the fatty acid oxidation we will see today. Okay. Now, so what are the sources of fatty acid? It is either the dietary lipids what we consume. So, the source for fatty acid is from the triacyl glycerol, the fats that we have in our diet, or it will be from the lipolysis of the reserved fat, that is from the adipose tissue, that is in the form of triacyl glycerol it is stored. So, from here we get this fatty acids, either from the diet or from the adipose tissue where it is stored as triacyl glycerol. So, this fatty acids undergo oxidation to form acetyl coenzyme A by a process called as beta oxidation. You have alpha oxidation, omega oxidation, etc. But the major kind of oxidation to yield energy is beta oxidation. Okay. Or if it is in excess, it can be esterified back into triacyl glycerol, and it is kept in the adipose tissue. So, fatty acids undergo beta oxidation, but it can also undergo alpha and omega oxidation, but today's class it is only about beta oxidation. And usually fatty acids are in the esterified form as triacyl glycerol or cholesterol ester or cholesterol ester. That means it will be esterified either with this glycerol, that is a fatty acid. When it is esterified with glycerol, it's called as triacyl glycerol, or it can be esterified with cholesterol, in which case it's called as a cholesterol ester. And whenever they are released into the circulation for this beta oxidation, that is for energy production, when they travel, they get bound to albumin for circulation, because otherwise it cannot be transported. So whenever they are in the free form, they are usually bound to albumin in the circulation. Okay. Now, what is this mobilization of fat from adipose tissue? That is, how does this lipolysis take place? So triacyl glycerol, I repeat, is a stored fat in the adipose tissue. From there, we have to see how this fats are mobilized. So the enzyme called as hormone sensitive lipase, you will come across this quite a lot of time. Hormone sensitive lipase is the one which causes lipolysis, which means it will mobilize the fatty acids from this triacyl glycerol. So once the fatty acids are removed or taken or hydrolyzed or lipolyzed from this fat adipose tissue, they undergo beta oxidation. What is the importance of beta oxidation? It is to generate energy. So the hormone sensitive lipase is the one which will remove this fatty acid from the triacyl glycerol, usually from carbon atom 1 or 2. And the reason why we tell it as hormone sensitive lipase is because for the action of this lipase, or for the fatty acids or the triacyl glycerol to be lipolyzed or mobilized from the adipose tissue, we need the action of certain hormones. Unlike the other lipases which will act on diacyl glycerol and monoacyl glycerol, which is not dependent on hormones. But for its mobilization from the adipose tissue, we need certain hormones, and that's why it's called as the, and that lipase which mobilizes is called as the hormone sensitive lipase. And so the complete degradation of triacyl glycerol to glycerol and free fatty acid is known as lipolysis. So before we get the fatty acid as such, it has to be mobilized from the adipose tissue. So in the adipose tissue, it is in the form of triacyl glycerol, which under the influence of this hormone sensitive lipase, which is in turn dependent on certain hormones, will degrade this triacyl glycerol into glycerol and free fatty acids. So this free fatty acid will undergo beta oxidation or any other kind of oxidation. So as I said, is this much clear? Okay. Now hormone sensitive lipase is so called because its activity is mostly controlled by hormones. So which are those hormones which favor mobilization of this or degradation of this triacyl glycerol into fatty acids and glycerol? It will be this epinephrine, norepinephrine, glucagon, thyroxine, ACTH, etc. So these are all the hormones which will cause increased lipolysis, and insulin is the hormone which decreases lipolysis. So how does this act? How will these hormones act? Say for example, as I mentioned, all these hormones which increases lipolysis, say for example epinephrine, norepinephrine, glucagon, they will bind to the receptors, and then again a protein called as G protein activate this enzyme. Have you come across this adenylate cyclase and all? That's okay. So once these hormones bind to the receptors, they activate adenylate cyclase which is present, which gets activated to active adenylate cyclase. So this adenylate cyclase will act on ATP, and what is formed? Cyclical AMP is formed. So this cyclical AMP is the one which will activate the inactive protein kinases, and this protein kinases will again activate the hormone sensitive lipases, which means hormone sensitive lipase, which is the enzyme which causes lipolysis, is active in the phosphorylated form. See, till here you know. adenylate cyclase. So, all these the hormones will activate the G proteins. G proteins too, it activates the adenylate cyclase. Adenylate cyclase will act on ATP, gives cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP will in turn activate the protein kinase. Protein kinase will in turn activate the hormone sensitive lipase. Okay. So, once this hormone sensitive lipase is activated, it causes lipolysis. If insulin, so whenever there is increase in CAMP, cyclic AMP, it favors lipolysis by this mechanism. How does insulin decrease lipolysis? The insulin acts on this enzyme phosphodiesterase, which will break down the cyclic AMP into 5' AMP, or it decreases the levels of CAMP. So, when there is decreased level of CAMP, there is no activation of this protein kinase, or protein kinase is in the dephosphorylated form, and again hormone sensitive lipase is also in the dephosphorylated form. So, they are not active, thereby inhibiting lipolysis. So, that is why it is said that hormone sensitive lipase, which causes lipolysis, that is the breakdown or degradation of the triacylglycerol, will be activated by these hormones, and hence the name. Is this clear? So, hormones like epinephrine, they will activate the adenylate cyclase, which in turn will act on ATP, forming CAMP. So, whenever there is increase in CAMP, it favors lipolysis. Insulin will actually degrade CAMP by the action of its of insulin on phosphodiesterase. So, CAMP levels will be decreased, thereby inhibiting lipolysis. Okay. Now, so what happens to these free fatty acids that are released? So, we have seen that whatever triacylglycerol are stored in the adipose tissue will be degraded into fatty acids and glycerol. So, what happens to these fatty acids which are released by lipolysis? This will be entering the circulation bound to albumin, and then these free fatty acids enter various peripheral tissues to provide energy. So, that is in the form of beta oxidation. So, 95% of the energy obtained from fat is from the oxidation of fatty acids. Okay. So, what happens to this glycerol? See, glycerol, so from triacylglycerol we have got fatty acids as well as glycerol. So, because this adipose tissue lacks the enzyme glycerol kinase, glycerol which is produced in the lipolysis cannot be phosphorylated in the adipose tissue. So, it will be transported to the liver, where it is phosphorylated to glycerol 3-phosphate, which will be utilized in the formation of synthesis of triacylglycerol again in the liver and phospholipids. Or glycerol 3-phosphate can enter the glycolytic pathway by getting converted to dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Okay, so, this is the fate of glycerol, but we are more interested in knowing about the fatty acid. What happens to fatty acid? This is just this can be asked, not as a short in viva, it can be asked, where what happens to the glycerol. So, adipose tissue, because it lacks glycerol kinase, it will not be phosphorylated and stored again back in the adipose tissue. It will be transported to the liver, where it is converted into glycerol 3-phosphate, which can be either utilized for the synthesis of triacylglycerol again and phospholipids, or this glycerol 3-phosphate can enter the glycolytic pathway by getting converted into dihydroxyacetone phosphate. So, how anybody can tell how is glycerol 3-phosphate converted to dihydroxyacetone phosphate? Let us leave this glycerol thing. Now, coming to the main topic that I was supposed to, that is the beta oxidation of fatty acids. So, this can come as a main question. Okay. So, what is this? I hope you all know what is fatty acid. Somebody's mobile is ringing. People are so careless. Okay. Now, I hope you all know the fatty acid chain. What is it made up of? Yes, hydrocarbon chain, and at the end you have a COOH, and at the other end carboxyl group, and the other end is the methyl group. So what is, I hope you also know that there is alpha, beta, gamma and so on as it is named, the nomenclature. So why is it called beta oxidation? Now the need for beta oxidation is for energy purpose. By beta oxidation we get energy. So beta oxidation is it's called as beta oxidation because in this pathway there is a sequential breakdown of this fatty acid into 2-carbon acetyl coenzyme A units beginning from the carboxyl end. So because this oxidation as well as the splitting of this occurs, or the oxidation and splitting of this fatty acid takes place at the beta carbon atom, it is called as beta oxidation beginning from the carboxyl end. And every time, say it is a palmitic acid, if I take an example, it is a 16 carbon containing fatty acid. So from the alpha 222 in 2 carbon units acetyl coenzyme A, it will be removed. So it is a sequential removal of 2 carbon atom in the form of acetyl coenzyme A. Okay. The whole fatty acid molecule will be broken down as 2 carbon units called as acetyl coenzyme A. Okay. So acetyl coenzyme A produced from beta oxidation. So what happens to these 2 carbon units, that is acetyl coenzyme A, which is released? So first and foremost it will be used for energy. How? By entering into the PCA cycle. Okay. So that is how this fatty acid is an effective fuel. Now, or this, if we have enough of energy, it can be converted into cholesterol and other steroid synthesis. That will be dealt in a separate chapter itself. Or it can also get converted into ketone bodies. So from acetyl coenzyme A, that is from the fatty acid that we have, which is broken down as 2 carbon units, you get acetyl coenzyme A. That can be used as for energy, for the synthesis of cholesterol, for the synthesis of steroids, and also for the synthesis of ketone bodies. Okay. Is this much clear? So as I said, the significance of this is to provide or meet our energy needs in between meals, during overnight fasting, and also periods of increased fuel demand, that is whenever there is an increased need for energy like during exercise. And increased fatty acid oxidation, that is abnormal. These are all physiological needs. This is pathological, that is whenever there is increase much more than what is needed, it is seen in case of starvation and uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. We will see later classes as to why increased fatty acid oxidation takes place in starvation and uncontrolled diabetes mellitus. Now let us see the proper beta oxidation. So this beta oxidation, why is it called beta oxidation? Because there is a oxidation and splitting of the carbon atoms, 2 carbon atoms at the beta carbon atom. So we get these 2 carbon units, which is acetyl coenzyme A, which will be channelized into energy production. Now, where does this beta oxidation take place? It takes place in the muscle, liver, heart, renal cortex. It does not take place in the brain and RBC. And the subcellular site is mitochondrial matrix. Why it does not take place in RBCs? Because there is no nucleus, there is no mitochondria. Why not in the brain? Because this free fatty acid which are needed are bound to albumin, as I said, they do not cross the blood-brain barrier. Okay. So that is the reason beta oxidation does not take place in the brain as well as in the RBCs. So subcellular site is mitochondria. It takes place in the mitochondrial matrix. Now beta oxidation before the actual or proper beta oxidation takes place, there are 3 steps. Before that, there are 2 steps. The first one is the activation of fatty acids in the cytoplasm. Then there is a transport of fatty acids into the mitochondria. Why? Because beta oxidation proper takes place in the mitochondria, but the fatty acids are still in the cytoplasm. So there should be a transport from the cytoplasm to the mitochondria. So there are 3 steps or 2 steps prior to the proper beta oxidation. One is activation of fatty acids in the cytoplasm, then transport of this activated fatty acids from the cytoplasm into the mitochondrial matrix. Then is the proper beta oxidation which takes place in the mitochondrial matrix. Okay. Now, activation of fatty acids in the cytoplasm itself can be a short note question. Okay. Either this beta oxidation can come as a main question wherein you will have to write all the 3 steps, in the sense the activation, transport as well as the beta oxidation proper, or it can only be the short note question as to activation of fatty acids in the cytosol. It can only be the short note on transport of fatty acids into the mitochondria, or just beta oxidation proper. Now, coming to the activation of fatty acids. Now, as I said, for example, if you have a palmitic acid which is 16 carbon containing fatty acid, now this fatty acid, any fatty acid that needs beta oxidation should be activated first. So when it gets activated, it is called as fatty acyl coenzyme A. Don't get confused between acetyl coenzyme A and acyl coenzyme A. After the activation of fatty acid, it is called as acyl coenzyme A, not acetyl. Acetyl coenzyme is a 2 carbon unit you get after the beta oxidation. So whenever fatty acids are activated, they are called as fatty acyl coenzyme A or just acyl coenzyme E. So before they undergo oxidation, there should be an activation. So the enzyme which does this activation of the fatty acids into fatty acyl coenzyme A is called as acyl coenzyme A synthetase, or the other name is thiokinase, which activates the fatty acid into fatty acyl coenzyme A. It is a 2-step process. So the fatty acid is activated to fatty acyl coenzyme A or plain acyl coenzyme A. So the first step in the so from fatty acid, one intermediate that we get is the acyl adenylate. You can remember fine. Otherwise, you can write acyl coenzyme. If you want to score more, you can include this intermediate. So from basically fatty acid is converted to fatty acyl coenzyme A. Okay. And where does this take place? It takes place in the cytoplasm. And what all we need here? We need obviously an enzyme which is either called as thiokinase or fatty acyl coenzyme A synthetase. So whenever there is a synthetase, what should be there? ATP should be there. Okay. So whenever there is a kinase, ATP is needed. So fatty acyl coenzyme A synthetase or thiokinase will act on this fatty acid and breaks down this ATP into pyrophosphate. Phosphatase will act on this pyrophosphate and yields 2-PI. Otherwise, normally what you see, ATP broken down into ADP and PI. But here, although there is a usage of only 1 ATP, but when you calculate the energetics, we have to consider this as 2 ATP because 2 high energy bonds are used up. So when we come to energetics, you need to consider this as 2 ATP being utilized because 2 high energy phosphate bonds are broken. Because from ATP you get PPI, and again PPI is broken down into inorganic phosphate by this pyrophosphatase. So we consider it as 2 high energy phosphate bonds being broken, so we consider it as 2 ATP being utilized. Okay. Now, so the intermediate that we form, you don't have to know the structure, just write fatty acid using thiokinase or acyl coenzyme synthetase using ATP we get acyl adenylate. So from acyl adenylate, we get fatty acyl coenzyme A, wherein coenzyme A is used up. So obviously from fatty, to form acyl coenzyme A, there has to be an entry of coenzyme A. So coenzyme A is used up and AMP is given, so it forms acyl coenzyme A, which is the activated fatty acid. Is this much clear? So this is the activation of fatty acid into fatty acyl coenzyme A using the enzyme fatty acyl coenzyme A synthetase or thiokinase, and we need ATP, and this takes place in the cytoplasm. So we have got this activation acyl coenzyme A in the cytoplasm. And remember this bit also, where it is, we consider it as 2 high energy phosphate, because 2 high energy phosphate bonds are broken. We consider that there is, for the activation, we need 2 molecules of ATP for calculation purpose. So what did I, so same thing, the pyrophosphatase catalyzes the breakdown of this pyrophosphate into 2 inorganic phosphates. So thus 2 high energy bonds are utilized in the process. This is an important point that you have to mention in the activation of fatty acids to fatty acyl coenzyme A. So what is the next step after activation? It has to be transported from cytoplasm into the mitochondria. Why? Because mitochondria is the place where beta oxidation proper takes place. Now let us see the transport of acyl coenzyme A to the mitochondria. Is it complicated? I can see all. Is it simple? Okay, you have to go back and read, otherwise you will forget. What happened? So transport of acyl coenzyme A. So far what have we learned? Yes, before that there is mobilization of the triacylglycerol from the adipose tissue by an enzyme called as hormone sensitive lipase. So we get free fatty acids and glycerol. Glycerol has completely different fate. We are bothered about now beta oxidation. So this free fatty acids have to be oxidized to give us energy. So for this energy production, we have 3 steps. First, it has to be activated. That the fatty acids have to be activated to fatty acyl coenzyme A. Then there is, once fatty acyl coenzyme A is formed in the cytoplasm, they have to be transported to the mitochondria where the proper beta oxidation takes place. So let us see the transport of this activated fatty acid or transport of acyl coenzyme A into the mitochondria. So this long chain fatty acid, fatty acyl coenzyme A is transported across the mitochondrial membrane as carnitin derivative. The carrier here is carnitin. Carnitin is nothing but beta hydroxy gamma trimethyl ammonium butyrate. If you can remember, fine, otherwise for now to understand you just remember it as carnitin, which is formed from lysine and methionine, which is present abundant in liver and muscles. Okay. So this carnitin is the one which helps in the transport of this activated fatty acid, that is fatty acyl coenzyme A, is transported from the cytoplasm to the mitochondria. So this is the, and you have to draw the diagram for, if this question is asked, please draw the diagram. So we have this inner mitochondrial membrane. So from the cytoplasm, it has to enter into the mitochondria. Because the fatty acyl coenzyme A is not permeable, the inner mitochondrial membrane is not permeable to this fatty acyl coenzyme A. It needs all this transport mechanism, that is, it's converted into acyl carnitin and then it can enter into the mitochondria. That's why all this circus. So from the cytoplasm, it has to enter into the mitochondrial matrix. So we have seen that there is fatty acyl coenzyme A, that is the active form of fatty acid, which is already activated. It is present now in the cytoplasm. So this binds with this carnitine, okay, and forms acyl carnitine, and coenzyme A is retained back in the cytoplasm. And mind you, there are different coenzyme A pools in the cytoplasm and coenzyme A pool in the mitochondria. So you have coenzyme A pools in the cytoplasm, separate coenzyme A pool in the mitochondria. So here in the cytoplasm, this carnitine will combine with this acyl coenzyme A, gives off coenzyme A. Because the coenzyme A is bulky, it cannot enter into the mitochondrial, inner mitochondrial membrane. And for this to get, to convert this acyl coenzyme A to acyl carnitine, there is an enzyme called as carnitine acyl transferase 1, which is present on the outer surface of the inner mitochondrial membrane. So that is the enzyme CAT1, carnitine acyl transferase, because acyl group is transferred to carnitine. So when there is CAT1, there has to be CAT2, which is in the mitochondria. So this carnitine or the acyl coenzyme A is converted to acyl carnitine, for which we need carnitine obviously, and the enzyme which converts this acyl coenzyme A into acyl carnitine is carnitine acyl transferase 1, which is present in the outer surface of the inner mitochondrial membrane. So with the help of this, acyl carnitine gains entry and it enters into a transporter, exchange transporter called as a translocase. So via this, it enters into the mitochondria or into the mitochondrial matrix. Is this much clear? So once it enters into the mitochondrial matrix using this transporter, exchange transporter, translocase. So as I said, there is another coenzyme A pool in the mitochondrial matrix also. So this acyl carnitine is acted upon by this carnitine acyl transferase 2, which is present in the inner surface of the inner mitochondrial membrane, and it takes in coenzyme A, and carnitine is given back and forms acyl coenzyme A. So whatever acyl coenzyme A was outside in the cytoplasm has gained access into the mitochondrial matrix, and this carnitine, whatever, it has to be reused. So again it uses translocase. So acyl carnitine enters and then carnitine goes. That's why it's an exchange transporter, where acyl carnitine enters and then carnitine comes out so that it can be reutilized again. So this is the way in which the activated fatty acyl coenzyme A gains entry into the mitochondrial matrix. Is this much clear? So you have this inner mitochondrial membrane, the outer surface and the inner surface. In the outer surface you have the carnitine acyl transferase 1. Inner surface you have the carnitine acyl transferase 2. So the fatty acyl coenzyme A will be converted to acyl carnitine by using this carnitine which is present and carnitine acyl transferase 1. Using the exchange transporter translocase, it gains entry into the mitochondrial matrix, where acyl carnitine combines with coenzyme A and carnitine is released, and that is because of the enzyme carnitine acyl transferase 2, and acyl coenzyme A is got. So this acyl coenzyme A will undergo beta oxidation, and then because it's an exchange transporter, for every acyl carnitine that gets in, carnitine has to get back into the cytoplasm. That's why it's an exchange transporter. Which one? The translocase. So only this can be asked as a short note question. Okay. Now coming to the beta oxidation proper. Beta oxidation proper takes place in the mitochondrial matrix. So beta oxidation of fatty acyl coenzyme A comprises of sequential repetition of 4 reactions, which means say if you have a 16, if you're talking about the beta oxidation of palmitic acid, it's a 16 carbon containing compound now. So every time beta oxidation takes place with all these 4 reactions, and then at the end of this 4 reaction, 2 acetyl coenzyme molecules are released. Again, now you're left with a fatty acyl coenzyme A with 2 carbon atoms at acetyl coenzyme which is released, and you have the activated fatty acyl coenzyme A. Are you getting this point? You have the fatty acyl coenzyme which is already activated. Now these steps take place as oxidation, hydration, oxidation and cleavage. So at the end of cleavage, 2 acetyl coenzyme A molecules come out. They are utilized for energy. You are left with 14 carbon containing compound, which is nothing but the fatty acyl coenzyme A. Again from that, 2 will undergo oxidation, 2 will come out as acetyl coenzyme A. So you are left with 12 acyl coenzyme A. Again they will undergo all these 4 steps. Again acetyl coenzyme A is released. So that 16 carbon containing, say for example if it's palmitic acid, it will undergo this 2, 2, 2, 2, it will go on removing. It will undergo about 7 cycles of these, all these 4 reactions. So there's all these 4 reactions keeps repeating. So 2 carbon acetyl coenzyme A will be released, and these acetyl coenzyme will enter into the TCA cycle. So what are these 4 steps that take place, that is the beta oxidation proper, to give that acetyl coenzyme A molecule, let us see. So beta oxidation of fatty acyl coenzyme A comprises of 4 sequential repetition of 4 reactions. They are nothing but oxidation, hydration, oxidation and thiolytic cleavage. Means there is a break of this. Here at this step there will be removal of 2 carbon acetyl coenzyme A. The first one is the oxidation. First oxidation, then there is hydration, then there is oxidation and then breakdown. The opposite of that almost will be the fatty acid synthesis. That is a breakdown. Fatty acid synthesis will be just the opposite of this. So let us see oxidation now. See, what is this first step that I have shown here? Activation. So just to summarize, fatty acid will be activated by the enzyme thiokinase or fatty acyl coenzyme A synthetase, and it's converted to acyl coenzyme A. What is the intermediate? Acyl adenylate. And you need ATP here, and obviously coenzyme A because it has to be converted into acyl coenzyme A. So through carnitine shuttle it enters. Yeah, I forgot to mention it's called as a carnitine shuttle because carnitine is a molecule which is helpful in its transport. So it enters through the inner mitochondrial membrane into the mitochondrial matrix. So the first step, that is the oxidation. What is oxidation? What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. So in this case it's removal of hydrogen, that is the hydrogen will be removed from the alpha and the beta carbon atoms, and the enzyme is a dehydrogenase. Now you know that the molecule is acyl coenzyme A, the activated fatty acid. So that acyl coenzyme A, there is oxidation taking place, so the enzyme is dehydrogenase. Okay. So acyl coenzyme A will undergo oxidation, and with the help of the enzyme acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase, and importantly you have to remember that there is a coenzyme, a flavoprotein called as FAD. What is the full form? Flavin adenine dinucleotide, which gets reduced to FADH2. Okay. And from acyl coenzyme A, the next intermediate that we get is the alpha beta unsaturated acyl coenzyme A, or it can also be called as the, just remember, enoyl coenzyme A. Enoyl or enoyl coenzyme A. And what happens to this reduced FAD? It will enter into the electron transport chain and generate 1.5 ATP. Earlier textbook gives it as 2 ATP, but now it is said that it just generates 1 molecule of FADH2, undergoes, that you will learn again in biological oxidation, that is FADH2 enters the electron transport chain, and there will be a generation of 1.5 ATP for every FADH2 molecule. Okay. The first coenzyme that is needed in this oxidation of acyl coenzyme A is the FAD. Okay, fatty acid oxidation, FAD. So acyl coenzyme A, first step is oxidation by acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase using FAD, which gets reduced to FADH2, which will generate 1.5 ATP after getting into the electron transport chain. So we get the first intermediate, that is the alpha beta unsaturated acyl coenzyme A or enoyl coenzyme A. Mind you, all these intermediates will be called as coenzyme A, whereas in case of fatty acid synthesis it will be ACP, ACP. Okay. So first what we get is alpha beta unsaturated acyl coenzyme A. So what is the next step I said? Hydration. So hydration means there should be a addition of water. So the enzyme will be hydratase. So what is the previous intermediate? Enoyl coenzyme A. So enoyl coenzyme A hydratase. So enoyl coenzyme A hydratase, with the help of this enoyl coenzyme A hydratase, by taking a molecule of water, it forms beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A. Hydration hydroxy, you can remember it that way, wherein beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A is formed. Okay. So beta hydroxy, so what is the next step after hydration? It is again oxidation. So we need again another dehydrogenase. So the enzyme will be beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase. But the coenzyme here is not FAD, it is NAD. First one FAD, F for first FAD, and here it is NAD. So NAD will get reduced to NADH plus H plus. It's always like that. FAD will get reduced to FAD, which one? H2. NAD always into NADH plus H plus. So this NADH again will enter into, just like the FADH2 can enter the electron transport chain to generate 2.5 ATP, which means your FADH2 molecule, every molecule will generate 1.5 ATP in the electron transport chain, whereas NADH will generate 2.5 ATP. Earlier it was said it is 3. We have reduced it by 0.5 ATPs. So we get the next compound, beta keto acyl coenzyme A. So what is the first one from acyl coenzyme A? You have enoyl coenzyme A, best acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase using FAD. Then enoyl coenzyme A will undergo hydration by enoyl coenzyme A hydratase and forms beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A. Then next step is the oxidation. So it has to be a dehydrogenase enzyme using NAD as the coenzyme. So it is beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase, and the coenzyme is NAD. Then we get beta keto acyl coenzyme A. This, what is the last one? What is the next fourth reaction? Is thiolatic cleavage. So this beta keto acyl coenzyme A will be broken down. That is, we get, what are we interested in now? Acetyl coenzyme A. So at the end you get acetyl coenzyme, which is a 2-carbon containing compound, and this side it will be the remaining -2, that is 14 carbon if you are taking the example as palmitic acid. So you have acetyl coenzyme A which has come out because of the thiolatic cleavage, and this side will be the fatty acyl coenzyme A which is reduced by 2 carbon atoms. So the enzyme will be thiolase. Okay. So this acetyl coenzyme A enters into the TCA cycle. There is a mistake here, it has to be 10 ATP. So when these acetyl coenzyme A enters the TCA cycle, you will get every molecule of acetyl coenzyme A will yield 10 ATP molecules. Okay. So that is the beta oxidation proper. So first fatty acyl coenzyme A undergoes oxidation What is the enzyme? Fatty acyl coenzyme A, dehydrogenase. What is the coenzyme? FAD. Gives what? Enoyl coenzyme A. And enoyl coenzyme A will undergo hydration and forms hydration H should be the hydroxy. So beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A. Again it undergoes oxidation by the enzyme dehydrogenase, that is beta hydroxy acyl coenzyme A dehydrogenase, and the coenzyme is NAD. So after this dehydrogenase or oxidation, what is the intermediate that you get? Beta keto acyl coenzyme A. Beta keto acyl coenzyme A will undergo thiolytic cleavage by the enzyme thiolase. So you will get acetyl coenzyme, which is 2 carbon containing compound, and a fatty acyl coenzyme which is shortened by 2 carbon atoms less. So from 16, if it is palmitic acid, it has come to 14. If it is stearic acid, that is if it is 18 carbon containing compound, it becomes 16. Okay. So acyl coenzyme which is shortened by 2 carbon atoms. So thus the beta oxidation proper, that's a 4 reaction: oxidation, hydration, again oxidation, and thiolytic cleavage. These 4 reactions are sequentially repeated for complete oxidation of fatty acids. So after one round of 4 metabolic steps, one acetyl coenzyme A unit is split off, and acyl coenzyme A, which is less by 2 carbon atoms, is got at the end. So that will go on continuing. And so the acyl coenzyme A formed in the cleavage reaction will undergo the same series of reactions. Acyl coenzyme A has come. So this fatty acyl coenzyme, which is less by 2 carbon atoms, again will undergo the same steps. Again 2 molecules are released of acyl coenzyme A. Then you get 12, then 10. So like that beta oxidation takes place. Okay. So thus an even chain fatty acid such as palmitoyl coenzyme A, which is a 16 carbon compound, is cleaved 7 times, producing 8 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A and 7 NADH, because 7 times this is happening. So 7 NAD molecules are utilized and 7 FAD are utilized, molecules are needed. So when you write a reaction, you can write it like this, wherein palmitoyl coenzyme A plus 7 molecules of water. You have the hydration step, so you have this 7 molecules of water, because the cycle repeats 7 times, plus 7 FAD plus 7 NAD plus 7 coenzyme A is also needed, will give 8 acetyl coenzyme A molecules and 7 FADH2, 7 NADH plus 7 H plus. So the acetyl molecules, whatever we get, enters into the TCA cycle, thereby generating energy, and so is the FADH2 as well as the NADH. One molecule of FADH2 yields 1.5 ATPs. NADH one molecule will yield 2.5 ATPs, and one acetyl coenzyme A, when it enters the TCA cycle, will yield 10 ATPs. So with that we have to calculate the energetics, which we will do in the next class. Okay. So please read and come. It is simple. Just get the words, that's it. Okay. Answer your attendance. 7, 8, 9, 16. Who is 16? 18. 34, absent. 52. Who is 52? 52 is absent. 54, 55, 56. 56, 58, 59, 60,
61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 70 is absent, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 2, 3, 103, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 115, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 146, 47, 48, 49, 50. 150. So the absentees are 34, 52, 56, 70, 72, 103, 115, 150.
ತಗೊಂಡು ಓ ಇದು ಕೊಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. Yes. See, today's lot of topics are there. I'll have to go a little faster, so be alert, okay? So all talking and all should be in a very low volume. That too, if it is highly necessary. If it is highly necessary, you can talk something. I know it is not highly necessary, but still be careful. Otherwise, you will not be. This only becomes a farce. The lecture classes are becoming a farce, no? If you don't listen. See. What is that? See, those who are not interested, just get out. I'll see and send them out. If you don't get out, if I see somebody talking, I'll get it. See, after warning, if you do know, I'll see who it is. And may not be for one class. 2, 3 classes I may not allow you. Okay? Just, I told you already once. Here. See, this and all we have seen. I'll just recapitulate only a small thing about the folding of the embryo. I think today I'll first, these things I'll show a little later. I'll just show you OHPs because they are a bit simpler. Of course, yesterday OHPs were, photographs were shown in that, but it's better to have this look at